The human condition is something that has been pondered over for centuries. Narratives enable us to explore this concept in ways that challenge, shape, and allow us to reflect upon that which is inherently human. Jane Eyre, 1847 by Charlotte Bronte, follows the story of a young woman in Victorian England and the internal battles she faces due to her position in society. The historical novel The Book Thief, 2005, by Markus Zusak, explores the experience of a child and those she meets living through World War II Germany. Both of these narratives shed light on the complexities of the human condition in ways that allow the reader to connect with the characters whilst also reflecting on the respective contexts of their time. One way The Book Thief communicates aspects of the human condition is through the use of death as a narrator. This is an extremely effective tool in conveying a unique view on what it means to be human and the fragility of one's mortality. Death spends the entire novel commenting on human nature. It is his purpose as a character, and one of the core themes of the narrative. The human heart is a line, whereas my own is a circle, and I have the endless ability to be in the right place at the right time. The consequence of this is that I'm always finding humans at their best and worst. I see their ugly and their beauty, and I wonder how the same thing can be both. This quote appears at the end of Part 9 on page 522. And demonstrates how Zusak has actively explored the human condition through the use of a character who is simultaneously an omniscient narrator. By establishing himself as separate from humanity, Death reinforces the importance of his perspective. The quote highlights the multiplicity of human nature and Zusak's dichotomizing of the human condition through the contrasting word choice. Where Markus Zusak used one character's perspective and identity to communicate this particular component of the human condition, Charlotte Bronte used many. Bronte introduced characters that showed a range of extremes and examples of just how different humans can be. Some of the characters that were used in this way are Helen Burns, Mr. Rochester, St. John Rivers, and Bertha. All of these people held attributes that were used to compare to Jane in the context of Victorian era. The relationships between these characters both contrast and complement different parts of human nature. For example, Helen Burns exists to highlight Jane's headstrong nature. Whilst Helen is submissive, calm, and devoutly religious, Jane struggles with her passion and ability to hold such blind faith in the divine. About halfway through chapter 6, Helen Burns expresses the sentiment, "It is far better to endure patiently a smart which nobody feels but yourself, than to commit a hasty action whose evil consequences will extend to all connected with you." To which Jane responds, "When we are struck at without a reason, we should strike back again, very hard. I am sure we should, so hard as to teach the person who struck us never to do it again." In this scene, Helen is urging moderation, whereas Jane's response is reactionary and aggressive, which was very unusual for her gender and time. Bronte has created Helen as a representation of the ideal young woman in that era, and to emphasize Jane's difficulty fitting in due to her nature. During the conservative Victorian era in which the narrative takes place, the concepts of a good person and a bad one were decidedly rigid. It is clear in this section because of Helen that Jane doesn't behave as she should in the eyes of the historical context in which this takes place. Jane's story reveals not only ideas about the human condition, but also how they were received in this specific period of time. Another factor both The Book Thief and Jane Eyre shares is the exploration of human emotions through the use of nature and colour imagery. In The Book Thief, Zusak utilizes vivid imagery in his description of the colours of the sky in particular, to create mood and atmosphere. Death's fascination with the colour of the sky creates powerful imagery. Different colours have different meanings for the story. "The last time I saw her was red. The sky was like soup, boiling and stirring. In some places it was burned. There were black crumbs and pepper streaked across the redness." This quote is from the prologue, as Death recounts the last time he saw the book thief. He relates the bombed remains of her town to food, yet the striking colours still allow for the significance of the scene to be felt. By all accounts, his character would have no reason to be anything but blunt about a scene such as this, as he, being Death himself, has seen it all before. Yet still he describes it eloquently, distancing himself and the reader from it, whilst also bringing the reader closer to the experience through the use of simile and metaphor, likening such horror to a very human warmth. With this scene, Death demonstrates an aspect of the human condition in himself: compassion. The nature imagery in Jane Eyre heavily concentrates on the imagery of fire to express the emotions and morality of the characters. For example, Mr. Rochester is often associated with fire, whereas St. John Rivers is compared to ice and snow. St. John is described as cold, hard-hearted, and repressed, contrasting Rochester's raging passion. It is St. John's cool demeanour that guides Jane's acceptance that she needs passion in her life. Although she acknowledges her wish for the vivacity in life that fire brings, she still wishes for control over it. Jane and Rochester's relationship is heavily represented by fire imagery. I am bound to you with a strong attachment. I think you good, gifted, lovely. A fervent, a solemn passion is conceived in my heart. It leans to you, draws you to my centre and spring of life, wraps my existence about you, and kindling in pure, powerful flame, fuses you and me in one. Bronte uses fiery metaphors to articulate Mr. Rochester's love for Jane. In the time this novel was written, the sort of passion shown by Jane and Mr. Rochester would have been frowned upon. After the scene, Jane was able to relinquish her passion and leave, yet Mr. Rochester had not yet atoned for all the turmoil his passion had caused, though he eventually did. Whilst flame was often used to allude to passion, the fire signifies sexuality too. This was clearest with Bertha and her symbolic arson attempts. When Jane's feelings toward Rochester begin blossoming, Bertha sets a fire in Jane's room, seemingly reacting directly to Jane's own sexual interest. These parts of human nature had to be revealed symbolically because of its context. Bronte used nature as a way of giving a deeper understanding of the characters. She implemented aspects of the natural world to help her in commenting on a part of humanity that in that period of time had so far been repressed. Both Bronte and Zusak have taken parts of the world around them and used them as tools to show human emotions and feelings. The narratives Jane Eyre and The Book Thief use literary tools to communicate a deeper understanding of aspects of the human condition, using techniques such as imagery, the use of a narrator, perspective, contrasts, and metaphors. Narratives are one of the many ways people investigate the human condition. Questions of what it means to be human recur throughout all sorts of cultures and historical eras. These authors have shaped their narratives to engage readers and share further insight into the range of qualities that make us human.